The engine coughed once, twice, and then fell silent. The silence that followed was a heavy, suffocating blanket, broken only by the chirping of unseen crickets and the frantic beat of my own heart. It was past midnight, and we were stranded on a desolate stretch of highway, miles from the nearest town. My wife, Priya, sat beside me, her knuckles white on the dashboard, while our 2 children, Mila and Rhythm, lay fast asleep in the back seat, innocent of the terror that had just seized our family. The only light came from the dim glow of the moon peeking through scattered clouds, illuminating the dark shape of our car like a lonely tombstone. Our boxer, Tommy, stirred in the cargo area, his soft, rhythmic snores a stark contrast to the growing dread inside me. He was barely 6 months old, a goofy, lovable puppy who saw every situation as an opportunity for a belly rub. I tried the ignition one more time, but the engine was dead. What are we going to do? Priya whispered, her voice trembling. I reached my phone, but as I'd suspected, there was no signal. We were truly alone. A cold wind rustled the leaves in the surrounding trees, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. Just as I was about to suggest we try to walk to the next exit, a pair of headlights appeared in the distance, a glimmer of hope in the overwhelming darkness. Look, I said, pointing. Maybe it's a tow truck. But as the lights drew closer, the hope in my voice faded. It wasn't a tow truck. It was a battered, windowless van, its headlights yellow and erratic. It pulled up slowly behind our car, its engine rumbling with a menacing growl that seemed to mock our silence. My heart hammered against my ribs. 2 men got out, their figures silhouetted against the van's headlights. They wore dark hoodies, their faces obscured by shadows. "Need some help, mister?" One of them called out, his voice a low, gravelly rasp. It was not a friendly tone. "We're good," I said, trying to sound firm, but my voice wavered. I knew instantly they weren't here to help. The man's eyes flickered to the kids sleeping in the back seat, and a cold shiver ran down my spine. "Looks like you're in a real fix," the other man said, his hands in his pockets. They started to walk toward us, one on each side of the car, as if to cut off our escape. I instinctively reached over and locked Priya's door. The fear in her eyes was a mirror of my own. I could feel our children's fragile lives hanging in the balance, and I was terrified. The 2 men were now just feet away from the car, and I had no idea what to do. It was in that moment, as the first man reached for the driver's side door handle, that Tommy transformed. The gentle puppy who loved to chase butterflies was gone. A deep, ferocious growl, unlike any sound I'd ever heard from him, erupted from the back of the car. It was not the playful bark of a puppy, but the warning of a wolf, a sound so full of primal power that it seemed to vibrate through the entire vehicle. Tommy stood on his haunches in the cargo area, his body rigid, his floppy ears alert, and his eyes, usually so full of love, were now sharp, unyielding, and utterly fearless. He let out a series of short, explosive barks that echoed through the night. The sound was terrifyingly loud, a sound meant to warn and intimidate. The 2 men froze. The one reaching for my door recoiled as if he had touched a live wire. They hadn't expected a dog, and certainly not a boxer that seemed to have materialized from the darkness itself. The growling continued, a low, constant rumble that promised swift and painful retribution if they came any closer. "What the hell is that?" one of the men muttered, taking a step back. The other man looked at Tommy, then at me, then back at the dog, a mix of frustration and fear on his face. Tommy's powerful build, his muscled neck and broad chest, suddenly looked less like a pet and more like a guard. He was a perfect statue of defiance. Just when I thought they were backing down, a new and terrifying sound shattered the night, the click of a knife being opened. The taller man pulled out a glinting blade, the moonlight catching its edge. "Get out of the way, Mutt," he snarled. This was the moment I was sure our luck had run out. They would try to distract him, to hurt him, and then they would come for us. I held my breath, tears blurring my vision. My children were still asleep. I couldn't bear the thought of them waking up to this. But Tommy didn't back down. He stood his ground, the growl intensifying to a low snarl, and then he did something completely unexpected. With a sudden burst of speed, he leaped from the cargo area and charged. He wasn't aiming for the men, but for a fallen branch a few feet away. He grabbed it in his mouth with a violent shake, snapping it in half with a sickening crack, then dropped it and stood in front of the car, facing the two men with a new, even more terrifying intensity. It was a brilliant, strategic move. It showed his power and his intelligence. He was not just a mindless beast. He was a guardian. The sound of the snapping branch and Tommy's fierce stance was too much for the intruders. They were now truly shaken. Their easy target had become a terrifying ordeal. Just as they were about to make a move, a second pair of headlights appeared on the road behind them. A police car. I don't know if I had somehow gotten a text message through, or the officer had just happened to be on patrol, but the sight of the flashing lights was enough. The two men cursed, threw their hands up, and without another word, scrambled back into their van and sped off into the darkness, leaving a cloud of dust and a lingering smell of fear. Tommy stood still, his body still rigid, until the police car had pulled up and an officer was talking to me. Only then did he slowly, cautiously, return to his usual self. He trotted over to the driver's side door, sat down and nudged my hand with his nose. His eyes were soft again, full of the familiar love and warmth that had defined him. We were all shaking, the panic finally giving way to a flood of relief. I reached into the back seat and hugged Mila and Rhythm, waking them gently, trying to explain what had happened without scaring them. Tommy saved us, I whispered to them, as they sleepily hugged the dog. Tommy simply leaned against me, his head resting on my knee, the true hero of the night. Not a word of thanks needed. We drove away, a tow truck on its way to meet us, but we were a different family now, bound not just by love, but by an act of astonishing, unexpected courage. In the darkness, our playful boxer had become protector, a sentinel, a light that had guided us to the most frightening moment of our lives.